To skip background info FF to 632.
Parasymbol 6 of 7 guided listening.
Our symbols have the capability to transform us at the level of the behavioral, and therein at the level of the epigenetic and ontogenetic. Culture's delegation in symbolic forms granted the ability to influence our decisions, productions, and reproductions. This includes the ability to distort them, too. Is it not, then, arguable that culture has evolved past the business of representation and into the fronts of behavioral control and active cultural computation? That culture has evolved firmly past this process of symbol making alone? For example, the Walt Disney Company filed a lawsuit to vie for special protections of their intellectual properties in 1998. Following their win, part of what they were awarded was an amendment to the boundaries of what kinds of intellectual properties could and could not be part of the American public domain. Such a movement was made with clear recognition of the connection that the cultural public domain has to the global public commons, and moreover, a recognition of the role Americanization played in the articulation of imperial Western influence within that global public commons. Particularly, this having happened during the infancy of the consumer internet meant that the Walt Disney Company had unprecedented leeway to offer the character of American global cultural influence for the entire first 2 decades of this millennium, putting them in a de facto control of the way these influences standardized social worlds emergent from the Western influence upon the global public commons in an unprecedented way. This translated into the Walt Disney Company using its new capital and cultural power to purchase multiple large media companies and conglomerates over which they could move to exert influence in a way that couldn't have been possible before. Not possible because of the specific way that they instituted this IP freeze. Prior to 1998, intellectual properties remained strictly within the domain of private holding and ownerships for a period of 80 years. Once a media property reached its 80th birthday, it could then be appropriated freely as an object of public domain. The bounds of the public domain were shifted such that only media properties published before 1918 would have eligibility until January 2019, after which point the 80-year rule would then resume. When the American public domain unfroze, it just so happened that one of the companies it acquired, Marvel, had become the centerpiece of American cinematic influence, driving billions in profit and incalculable influence over prevalent weirdo jingo American militarization narratives and all kinds of other social gunk. Part of the deal when Disney purchased Marvel is that Marvel would bifurcate into Marvel Comics and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that Disney would own the latter but not the former. Marvel would control its own narratives and Disney would appropriate them. So that year, 2019, when the American public domain unfroze and Marvel set its sights on forming its applications of the subject matters dealt with through this X-Men property, meaning existing discourses around apartheid, paramilitarization, racialism, post-human hominid obsolescence, and fascism. At this point, the Marvel Comics division then decided to completely refresh its X-Men franchise from bottom up by publishing the House of X and Powers of X. This put the writer of these two titles in position to set the tone for the way Disney will come to deal with these themes of apartheid, paramilitarization, racialism, post-human hominid obsolescence, and fascism during the final few years of this decade. I took care to conduct a sonic analysis of what primitives, that I've identified as parasymbols, the writer seemed to be using in developing these titles. In part, this practice of taxonomy making is an artistic inquiry into the process of contemporary media's evolution from dealing primarily in the presentation of complex symbols to an expansion toward the delivery of alternative fronts of signaling the effective contents of dynamical figurations. In the form of these parasymbols, enacting measures of behavioral control and active cultural computation. Heretofore is one result of that artistic inquiry, bringing us possibly closer toward the creation of a basic vocabulary of the standard forms of such parasymbols and other signaling fronts. If such forms' existences can be further validated, this parasymbol, number 6 out of 7, abstracts an effective dynamic applied by the writer of House of X and Powers of X for the way that characters are imbued with the novel ability to boot up, die, and immediately resurrect as ever-undead figures. Formally original bodies are follicles for identical, but discrete, qualid consciousnesses. This parasymbol characterizes, causally, the way artificiality can fully leave the realm of inanimate consequence and become wholly part of biotica. And as a parasymbol, this behavior of noetic irreproducibility and cognitive duplication can be executed over and over again as a kind of narratological phoneme. A plot device, but more specific. In this case, variable x is represented by a piecewise logarithmic function oscillating with respect to the direct proportionality between its pitch and speed. The selected sample, untransformed, for variable x, expresses as the following lyrical passage.
Always knew we could have been something. Your lips and mine, babe, out on the floor. We're intertwined, babe. I'm wanting more, 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 more. Let's play catch, baby. Throw it back. I'm blowing your mind, baby. I'll be exact.
And the selected sample, untransformed, for variable z, expresses as a warped clip of a musical property from the catalog of Michael Jackson, presently owned by Sony. Past catharsis, annihilations are evaded through the slippage between x and z, when x as a container of a numerical range of w are delimited by the zones of its derivative. And z is only ever its own absolute value. And randomness is generated through the slippage between x and z. Let us now observe.
There's no